Hello, everyone. Welcome to week 2 of class. Sorry about the discussion post for this last week. I did not realize that the settings got changed. It must have happened when I copied it over, like the template over from last year's class. That was weird. It'll be fixed from now on, although the replies aren't necessarily required for this week's discussion. So just my bad on that. If you sent me the replies, thank you. If you sent me a question, also thank you. um, Biggest thing for those, as you'll see, I don't necessarily plan to grade those like super hard. It's definitely more of a please engage with the material and put some thought into it. If it's just a couple sentences or things like that, definitely points are going to be deducted. Those are meant more for um, engaging with the topic, taking kind of that next step forward, really getting you to think about what's going on. So I'll always leave feedback as I'm grading, just to kind of keep you guys in the loop for what I'm doing. For this week, we're actually going to take a look at the different types of esports organizations. So for the discussion posts, some of you did kind of get into this and mentioning that, hey, maybe esports isn't just playing competitively to be an org. You don't just have to have a team. It can be like a list of other things. We're going to take a look at kind of all of the different aspects and stuff of this, and then give you a chance to engage with that with this week's discussion. Also, you'll see that there is details for our first project. That's not due for a couple of weeks. Wanted to give it to you guys as early as possible so that you can really have a chance to look at it, get acclimated, and there will be no excuses for doing it late because I'm giving it to you 3 weeks early. So yeah, let's get started. So this is just kind of a document that I made to kind of go through all the different types of orgs. Nothing too crazy. I can post this for you guys just to kind of give you a point of reference as you're going through. Could be helpful for some other stuff too. But we'll just kind of go down the list. Some of them tie into each other, others don't, and are just kind of one offs. And there may be things that are missing, and that's kind of the whole point of this week is to just look at all of the different ways people can kind of engage with the industry. So first, we'll talk about professional teams. This is probably by far the most common that people will think of when you say like, "Hey, what's an example of an esports organization?" You're most likely you're gonna say something like T1, Team Liquid, Optic, 100 Thieves. So these are like essentially teams that or like organizations that have teams in multiple games, are looking to really compete and enter like these top tier leagues, something like the Call of Duty League, the LTA, doing Valorant, different things like that. So they're trying to compete at the highest level. Revenue for these things could be lots of different things. And we'll get into this a little bit later in class too, but things like sponsorship, merchandise, sometimes ticket sales, not usually because it's esports. Again, a little bit later down the road. Some teams will lean on content creation and use like YouTube and Twitch as revenue streams. Prize winnings, not usually. Teams tend to give those to the players. That's usually best practice, but sometimes there are agreements where some of it could go back to the organization. So next we'll look at like those are the standard ones. You guys know those. College and high school esports. You guys hopefully are aware that esports exists at the college level and stuff too. I mean, Manchester has a great program. Um, Things like Maryville University, theirs is really cool if you haven't looked them up. And then it also stems to high schools. Some of the bigger ones that you guys probably know of, Carmel, Snyder over in Fort Wayne. So those are like all good examples of like education esports. So that works a lot different than the pros. I mean, obviously, you're not working necessarily in those top leagues, but you're most likely working with some type of organizer or things like that to kind of go through. They can be varsity, they can be club, scholarship, non-scholarship. That's really all up to the institution that you're at and kind of how they plan to build their esports orgs. Really, I mean, you're seeing a shift in esports organizations being a part of athletic departments. So not just house under student life. That's actually something that I'm navigating at Spalding. Is where when I was at Manchester, everything was under student life. It was through there, run completely separate from athletics. Now at Spalding, I'm in the athletics department, um, and I have the support of an athletics program, but also have some of the barriers and stuff too. Not working with the NCAA, but kind of those things that trickle down to the department level. So lots of different things. This is growing. More and more universities are adding it. There is examples. Obviously, you guys are in an esports class, so offering degrees, minors, focuses, things like that. That's been kind of back and forth over the last couple years. I think it's a great way for people to get involved in esports. Like if you want to potentially work in esports, education is probably the least volatile way to kind of break in to the industry. Number three overlaps a lot with number two with those like education and grassroots organizations. So I totally forgot to mention things like these are going to be things like NACE or the GLEC, ECAC. A lot of times these are going to be like networks or conferences that like education uh, teams would compete in. So those are good examples of it. Same thing for the Indiana Esports Network, IEN there. It offers like a place for high schools to come together as a collective and compete. Um, every state does it differently. I've found that in Kentucky, it's actually under the Kentucky High School Athletic Association, KHS Sports, KHSAA. Um, so like lot of different ways that it can be involved and stuff like that. But yeah, they'll partner with things in the community or with schools and things like that. Another example could be something like Stay Plugged In, recruitment platform for high schoolers to get noticed by college teams or to do some of their recruiting. So lots of great examples here. And kind of that grassroots kind of ties right into number four as well. Things like tournament organizers. So people like been IEN, NACE, Black, ECAC, those types of things. Oftentimes, they're also tournament organizers. So some examples that I typed in here: ESL, DreamHack, and then MLG. I mean, that was the big one that everyone heard of at first. Um, these are the ones that Odyssey, right? They're doing some cool stuff. So I'm getting a phone call. One sec. All right, we're on pause. I'll work a full time job as well, so balancing, doing all that kind of stuff. But yeah, terminal organizers. These are going to be the places that your organizations that you're at, whether it be professional or education, amateur, different things like that. Most likely, you're going to interact with the terminal organizer to compete, right? So these could be anything from online to in person to professional, amateur, education, lots of different scope there. This could be as simple as a local game store hosting Pokemon VGC on a Sunday or something, and having like 6 or 7 people show up and hosting little cups there. Or this could be like League of Legends World Championship, right? So that again ties in a little bit later, but some interesting things there. Next, software companies. Again, these kind of go hand in hand with tournament organizers, and a lot of times these places are used for those tournaments. So these could be like again tournament organizing or matchmaking tools. I can help with like brackets, scoring, different things like that for the events. A lot of times this will tie into number six with game developers. Could be things like anti cheats or stuff like that. Lots of times you'll see these big leagues or brands or organizers partnering with one of these types of software companies to help run their brackets or stuff like that. Um, Next are the game developers. If you're talking about esports, game developers have to be in the conversation because they kind of control what goes on in esports, right? So I always describe this as like esports is so different, and you can't like compare it directly to another sport because like Riot owns League of Legends and Valorant and can push out an update that completely breaks the game, or like you could be the best Doctor Mundo in League of Legends in an A or something, and Riot's like, actually, we're gonna nerf this character. It's too it's too good, and then like the best player on your team can't compete because their roles are a little bit different, things like that. Yeah, potential game breaking updates that like baseball doesn't get. They don't like, sure, they have like regulations and stuff like that, but it's not an update that's gonna happen like that. They have like different associations and things like that that get voted on that kind of dictate those rules. Whereas like legitimate gameplay can be completely changed in a matter of a day, or companies can just shut down. Um, or like a great example that happened recently was Overwatch. The switch to Overwatch 2. It used to be 6v6, now it's 5v5. That's a whole person on a team that's no longer playing because the developer's like, yeah, let's try a different format. So lots of things there. A lot of times they, again, patches, updates, everything like that for the esports titles that don't always have esports in mind, but are more so for their game. So that's kind of a balance that you have to think about with the game developers. However, some developers do offer leagues and stuff and support those for their games, like Riot, things like the LTA or the VCT, um, Activision Blizzard, which is now under Microsoft, but the whole big thing there with like the COD League or Microsoft with Halo doing their championships throughout the year. Um, so lots of different things there. There are also like coaching and training organizations or softwares. I put AIM Labs here because that's like as close as you're gonna get to training. But something more like Medify makes more sense where this could tie into esports because you could have a coach on there that you go to help you like develop personally and stuff. This is one of those fringe ones that it could be considered an org, but it's worth mentioning. Same thing for news and media. I don't know where this one came from. That was old. But here like are examples of people who cover esports. So you have things like Dexerto, Esports Insider. If you ever heard of Jake Lucky, I don't know what the name of his channel is now. He's been on a couple different ones. But like people or companies that are covering esports for like news. Think of it kind of like the ESPN for esports, although there isn't necessarily something like that. Just gets coverage from a lot of different avenues. Um, and then we have things like content creation and influencer orgs. So a lot of times these are going to overlap back up here with number one with the professional teams, but not always. So something like OTK, they aren't necessarily an esports org, but I would say that there's a lot of overlap, and sometimes they do host competitions. But this is a group of influencers coming together to create content, a lot of times with games and gaming. FaZe and 100 Thieves are definitely in that like double dip territory where like FaZe essentially has like two completely different branches. It has like content creation with all the streamers, think like Lacey, Ronaldo, all those guys. And then they have FaZe Esports where they're competing in all of these different games, think like CS, Call of Duty, stuff like that. 100 Thieves is more of like a melting pot where they incorporate their players in the bulk of their content and are doing things on it. They've gone back and forth over the last few years. Again, industry things that we'll cover as we go through the class and stuff. But like a lot of great examples of these different organizations. Like I said, I'm gonna clean this document up for you guys before I post it. This was just kind of me um, word vomiting and giving examples of stuff and talking points. I'll clean it up before I post it for you. But I hope that that is um, like a good breakdown for you in terms of like what types of different organizations that there could be. Like I said, I think a lot of you got there in your discussions in knowing that like, hey, these are like the different types of things that we could be a part of, or esports isn't necessarily just one thing, but could encompass a lot of different things. And that's pretty much the gist of this week. Let's look at the modules and stuff now. So in terms of week 2, what like your esports organization? So this discussion or weekly assignment is 100% crafted to help you with your project. So the more work that you put in here and thoughts, is the more work you've already done toward the first project in this class. So the questions here are kind of designed more so to like get you thinking as to what like your topic and stuff will be for that assignment. So like I said, we'll use this discussion as a place to decide what your topic will be for your organization project. This doesn't have to be final. You're 100% okay to change based on feedback that I give you, any conversations and stuff that could happen. But like again, a place to get you started. It's kind of like your super rough draft for that. But this should be a good resource for you when you're working on your project. I say 4 to 5 sentences for each question. Really, please do try to give me that. It only helps you as we move through everything and get you ready for that project. Um, no replies. Don't worry about this for this one, as this really is just designed to help you get a head start on your project. Types of questions: what type of organization will you create? You could do a professional esports team and you plan to compete in Valorant. If you say that you want to make a team, definitely like say what the meaning behind it is or where you want to compete or like what your structure or format could be. Don't just say I want to make an esports team. Give me a little bit more details when it comes to that, especially for this, as I can help give you feedback after what it'll look like. You could also create a tournament organizer or like an esports solution for high schools because it can get kind of messy with Play VS and stuff. Like, be creative with what type of organization you want to do. Um, I think there's some really cool things that we can do. I'm gonna try to find an example of a project that someone did last year and post that for you guys. I just have to see if it's still in the Canvas files. That way you guys can see like a pretty good example of what to do. What is the mission of this organization? So that kind of ties into what I'm asking with the first one. Don't need the formal mission statement yet, but that will be a part of the project. So start thinking about like what you want to do as like you kind of go through this. Look up mission statements of other esports organizations to kind of see what you want to do. What are you going to accomplish with this org? Next, why is it an esports organization? This one is just kind of talk to me about how it's going to interact with esports. Obviously, if you're making a professional team, that one's a little more straightforward. This is where we can start to talk more deeply about how you're going to compete or how you're going to like interact with the industry as a whole. But if you're an education solution where you want to go and help, say you want to create a one-stop shop to go to schools and like, hey, we're going to help you create your org and give you all that kind of stuff. That's how is that an esports organization and not just something else, right? Tell me how you're going to interact with the industry. And then who will you need to make sure this organization can operate? Or who and what really. So think of this as like basic, super basic, like org structure. Like, is it just going to be you? Are you going to have some other people on your team, like a coach or marketing or player relations, partnerships, things like that? So, what types of people will you need in that organization? And what kind of space and stuff will you need? If you're a tournament organizer, are you going to have and build your own venue, or do you plan to like rent venues and stuff like that? How will your org generate revenue? So the question itself is kind of vague, but I hope the bullet point under helps you kind of craft a few sentences and give you some ideas for how the org could be profitable or how you're even going to run it and stuff like that. So last thing that I'll try to quickly break down because this video is getting kind of long is this org project. We'll touch on this as we go through the next couple weeks, but just wanted to really post the details for you guys. It's a big part of the grade. You can look at the percentages and stuff in the syllabus, but this is kind of your almost like creating a pitch for your own esports org. There are going to be two parts to this project. Part one is research, and then part two is like actually kind of that pitch. And not like a hard pitch. Like I'm not gonna expect you to stand up and like, hey, this is my esports organization. This is what we're doing. Although that does kind of tie into the final a little bit later on. So maybe think about structuring it that way to give you a little bit of practice. And hopefully the example that I should still have will be a good like indication of how this should be formatted. Two parts should be uploaded together and as a PDF. Anything that's not like labeled as a discussion in Canvas, please upload as a PDF because it makes it so much easier for me to view it the way that you intended, rather than like I have a huge monitor, and sometimes my windows are weird in terms of like Word or things like that. So just please do a PDF that's just easy for everyone and can be viewed the way that it was intended to. But part one of this project is research. So I want you to conduct research on two different types of esports organizations. So if you wanted to conduct research on 100 Thieves, you cannot do research on something like FaZe, Liquid, Optic, any of those types of things. I would want you to do something like Eternal Organizer, or like an education thing. If you do a pro team, try not to just do a college team. Um, that way you can really see the different types of orgs and stuff. Um, so this is like, yeah, it provides some info on the org, what their current issues have been, and how like they've improved over the last couple years. So we're really gonna take some research for it. What are their goals, objective, and mission? Um, if you can't find a flat out mission statement, you should at least be able to find some type of direction for them. Again, what are the challenges that they face, and what purpose does that organization serve? So really thought out answers for all four of those. Cite your sources. You have to have a couple sources for this, or else like you can't do research and not have sources basically. So please cite all of them. It doesn't need to be MLA, APA. Just make sure I know where you got it. Because if you don't cite, I'm not going to give you points for that. Show me that you did research. Part two, this is more so your org and what kind of you're planning to do, where you're crafting things, not just doing research, right? So, like, what is the focus of your organization and what will you do? Oh, I'm creating Spalding Esports. We're a collegiate esports program. We plan to compete at the college level, try to win, and overall improve like enrollment and things like that for a program. All those types of things. Like, what are you going to do? Develop a mission, vision, and 3 goals and objective statements. There should be an objective statement for each goal. So, our mission is to create well-rounded student athletes as part of our program. Vision to be the best, to be the very best, like no one ever was. 3 goals: we're going to have this many students compete in and do this well in tournaments, and then your statement is how you're going to achieve that goal, basically. Like I said, we'll provide formats and stuff for that as we move along. And then what departments will you have? I wanted a legitimate like organizational structure or org chart here. Please map it out, draw it out, and include it in the PDF. Like think of your traditional org structure. Is it going to be like CEO at the top and then branch down, or is it going to be more flat? Um, really interested to see what you'll come up with for kind of that org structure. What and then after you give me that like graph, picture, breakdown, um, break down what the roles are that you've listed and what the key responsibilities of each of those roles or departments are. Um, I that's really all I have for this week. If you have any questions, please feel free to reach out. I try to check my email a couple times throughout the weekdays, a little bit different on the weekends. But we'll try to check kind of as we go through. And one sec, I'm gonna sirens. Yeah, so I live like right next to the fire department, so sirens are always really loud and going through here. But yeah, for this week, if you have any questions, just let me know. Try to check my email, like I said, a couple times a day throughout the weekday. Weekends are a little bit different. I try not to be on my phone doing work stuff on weekends. Life balance is important. But I'll try to, as I see them, answer any questions that you guys send through. Um, yeah, when it comes to this kind of stuff, I am going to post an announcement with a couple times for you guys to vote on. I do work full time, but my schedule is pretty open. So what I plan to do is just set an hour to be on Teams or Zoom or something, where if you guys have any questions, you can just join that. And if the time that I come up with absolutely does not work, we'll reevaluate and try to find the time that people can join. I'm gonna try to keep it through the day or like early afternoon. Not gonna go super late in the evening. That way to be respectful of your guys' time and of my own. But like I said, if you guys have any questions, please reach out. I know I covered a lot today, but really the only thing that's due this week is the weekly assignment. Again, no replies to the discussion, and I'll get some of these like resource articles and stuff posted for you guys too. Thanks a lot, and I hope you have a good week.